Our own gang here, Tim Muro from Harrisburg. He's one of the few Navy guys that we seem to be able to get to come here. But Jim's a WW2 deepwater sailor, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but I'll just say that he's a plank holder on the cruiser, the USS Astoria. And if you know what a plank holder is, that means he was there when they built it and was there when they brought it home at the end of the war. So without further ado, Jim, it's all yours.
Thank you. I know you've heard this before, but at the beginning of World War II, there were 16 million men and women in service. And of the 16 million, 2 million saw combat. While I was in the latter part, 1 in 8, I'm not going to talk about combat unless somebody asks me a question. I'm going to talk about a deadly storm, and in hindsight, it was worse than we thought, because there was no defense. You couldn't shoot at it. So I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget it. In hindsight, there was no defense against this except the design of the engineers, craftsmanship and the workmanship of those who built the ships, also the seamanship of those who navigated us through this mind-boggling ordeal. I'll start by giving you a rundown of my time in the service. I enlisted in the Navy 21 May 1943 in the V-12 program. Now, the V-12 program was designed to create officers. And I was called to go to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, 1 July. So I went there, and we were in the Navy. We got the shots, we got the uniform, the whole 9 yards of drills. We'd get up in the morning at reveille, 5:45 or 6 o'clock, and we did the marching and so forth. We did obstacle courses. We did cross-country runs. We had to take a swimming test. And you had to take at least the basic test. You stepped off of a 10-foot platform into the water, surfaced and swam 2 lengths of the pool. I don't know what it was anymore. But anyway, you had to do all that. And then on top of that, we had academics. We had to do whatever you had to do to pass all the other things, how to figure this out and figure that out. So that went on. It was routine. It wasn't too bad. But, and we had the only thing deviating from the ordinary military was the fact that there were only 2 of us to a room. It was like we were in dormitories, and each dormitory was a platoon, and there were about 35 to 40 in a platoon. So this went on fine until after the 7 months at the tail end of January in 1944. It called me into the office, headquarters or whatever. Muro, you flunked analytical geometry. Oh, okay. Flunked analytical. You don't understand. What's that? You're washed out. Oh, okay. Now the Navy, you know, all the services, they're very particular, very efficient. Instead of, I had already done 7 months in the service and gone through all the trials and tribulations, where do they think they sent me? Boot camp. So, boot camp was a piece of cake because I've already been there for 7 months. There wasn't anything you could throw at us. There were 4 of us that flunked out at the same time. The only bad part of it was I went to boot camp at Sampson. Now, I know that there are some of you in here familiar with northern New York State, and this was in February and the first part of March. That is cold, very, very cold. But we spent, 3 or 4 of us, spent most of our time helping the other people. I was surprised how many of them got sick with the shots, how many of them got the flu, and between carrying them up to sick bay and teaching them everything that we knew that they didn't, you know, that was something. It was something different. So anyway, at the end of, I think it was around the middle of March, 1944, graduated from boot camp, and came home on leave. And then when I left from there, they sent me to Newport, Rhode Island, and a thing called the outgoing unit, OGU. And we didn't do much there, just sit around all day. And once in a while, they'd take us out, 3 or 4 of us in a rowboat, and put us out and Narragansett Bay and row around for a while and come in and go out on liberty. Come back and the same thing. So after a couple of weeks, I got orders, and I was ordered to report to the Cramp Shipyard in Philadelphia. And they sent me down there, and I was assigned to, as Bill said, the USS Astoria, the CL-90, a light cruiser. And it wasn't completed, but it was at the shipyard. There were about 10 of us, 12 of us, living in a little square cinder block building right on the shipyard territory. And our job was to go on that ship every morning, every day, and put things on the ship to get the ship ready to go into service. It's like moving into a house. So that was fine. There was no problem there. And at the end of a certain time, they said, we're ready to put this thing into commission. So they sailed the ship down the Delaware River to the Philadelphia Navy Yard. And they commissioned the ship 17 May 1944. Now, there were two things involved there that I'll talk about later, not right now, but later in the program, or at the end of the program, I'll tell you about the commissioning. At the time, I was in what they called the spud locker. And what we did was prepare vegetables. We didn't peel any potatoes. We had a machine that was like a washing machine. And inside the washing machine was like sort of a sandpaper thing. And you threw the potato, you throw 100 pounds of potatoes in there, and you turn this thing on, the water would go in, and turn it off in about a minute and a half, and you'd have peeled potatoes. And all you had to do was take the eyes out sometimes. Of course, we prepared all the other vegetables. We had a crew of about pretty close to 1,300. And if you didn't remember to turn that machine off, and nothing flat, you'd have marbles. So, but anyway, the Astoria was a light cruiser. It was 610 feet long. It was 66 feet across, and it was about 90-some feet high. And I mentioned that. It displaced about 10,000 to 12,000 tons. Because I want you to understand how big this ship was when we hit this storm. But before we get to that, there's some other things to go through. We took a shakedown cruise at Trinidad, and that was in July. And this ship had, most of us were teenagers. And so the ship had about, I'd say 85 to 90% teenagers. And that's when we all got seasick. So we went down to Trinidad. We came back, and everything, they had taken up all the bolts and the rivets, et cetera, et cetera. And we went down through the Panama Canal up to the west coast, stopped at San Diego, stopped at Mare Island, went out to the Pacific. We went down to Pearl Harbor, and when I was in Pearl Harbor, I got a visitor. I'm going to digress a little bit to tell you a little bit about this visitor. The visitor was my brother. Excuse me. He was give me a minute. He was a Navy pilot, and he flew F-4Fs, Wildcats. And we talked for a while. He was in a pool. And he said the one guy in the pool was a real character. He was the youngest guy in the whole pool. These are aviators. He said this fellow ran around and his shorts most of the time, and he smoked a big cigar. And like I said, he was 20 years old, this guy. And my brother had access to all the he was a photographer in the service. They even took the guns out of his plane and put cameras in there. He saved these pictures that he had taken of these people, and he sent them to this guy, showed in his shorts and anything he could wear, and this big cigar, and he sent it to him when he got to the White House. George W. Bush, H. My brother's wing commander was a fellow, and I met this guy. His name was Alex Phillips. He was from Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is my brother's wing commander. That registers to you, Phillips 66. That's who it was. Okay, now we head out to the Pacific, and we get into the Third Fleet. This is a little tricky here, the Third Fleet. And there was the Lexington, was where we were designed to protect the aircraft carriers. That was our main job, to put up planes that you go on strikes. What do you think was the Lexington? That was my brother's ship. Now, we had another odd thing happen to us. As you go from east to west, you cross the international date line. And what you do is you skip a day. So we went out and we missed, went to bed hit the sack on Wednesday evening, get up Friday morning. What Thursday do you think we missed? Thanksgiving. But we celebrate anyway. And we were celebrating, we were near any way top. It's not there anymore. They blew it up with an H-bomb. It's gone. So now we're with the Third Fleet. The Third Fleet commander was Bill Halsey. And his second command, and the second command also took care of the aircraft parts. He was in charge of all the aircraft carriers. And he was the guy by the name of John McCain. He was the grandfather of the guy who ran for president. So now we're going into the Third Fleet, and we're going to cross up by Leyte and Luzon, and we're going to go and do airstrikes in Tokyo. Well, unfortunately, we started to, I'm ahead of myself a little bit here. We were going to refuel. And the way they did it was, they would refuel the larger ships, battleships, the aircraft carriers, and the cruisers. And then the smaller ships would get refueled off of us. So we were supposed to never, ever go below 85%. Unfortunately, the day that we started to refuel, the wind kicked up. Now, it looks like this. I know you can't see this, but after it's over, maybe you can see it. There's a whole bunch of us here, and here are the fueling lines here, and all the lines here. And in between, the water gets very, very rough, because you have two ships, and big ships too. And it got to the point of where the ships were coming together, and the things were going into the water, and then when it pull apart, then the lines would get stretched. So they hold out, they bring the axes up. So they brought axes up, and they were afraid we were going to have to cut the lines. I don't think they ever cut the lines, but we couldn't finish fueling. So that had told a story later on that had a result, that had whatever happened from that, because some of that fuel was also part of your ballast, because they had ballast in the ship, but some of it was your ballast, and that's what kept you on the straight and narrow. So that was in about the middle of the 17th of December, and it just kept getting worse and worse. We had to cut away. We couldn't fuel. So none of the larger ships could fuel. We just kept on going. And then the winds got worse. Things got bad. So they told everybody to stay. Don't go out on the deck. Stay inside unless you're going on watch. Now, I went on watch at 8 o'clock the following morning. I was dressed, foul weather gear, thing around my face with a tie over the top of foul weather pants over the top of galoshes. I went on watch at 8 o'clock in the morning. The wind was really whipping up. By about time 10 o'clock, the lines were starting to blow down. And it got to the point of where, if it hadn't been for gravity, you wouldn't know it was up or down. Everything looked the same. You couldn't tell. The sky, the water was a little bit different, but the sky was very, very grayish. The whole atmosphere was the same thing. You couldn't tell the sky from the atmosphere or anything. And the winds blew, and the ship then started with pitch and roll. And we would now, you have to think about this. There's a ship 600 feet long, and you would hit a wave. You had to go into the wave. Didn't go alongside of it. Had to go into the wave because you went alongside of it, you're done. You went into the waves. You would go into the wave, and then you would start going up like a roller coaster. You would go up to the top. The ship would turn at the top. The screws would come out of the water. When those babies come out of the water, just shook that whole ship. Just shook and shook it. Terrible. And then you'd slide down the other side. All the time you're rolling. And you hit the bottom of that thing, and everything would shake, and things would fall off. Things fell off shelves and so forth. And we got to the point of where they couldn't feed you anymore. What they did was they hung coffee pots from the overhead with wires, and they were filled with Kool-Aid. They couldn't make coffee. You couldn't put anything on a stove. And they fed us with sandwiches, which was better than a lot of other people got in the war, I'll tell you that. We didn't complain. We knew what was going to happen. We knew what was going on, how things were. But it got worse and worse. And they said, if you are not on watch, stay in your compartment, stay in your bunk if you have to. So that was something, if you were in your bunk, and you would, all of a sudden it's like being in a movie with an exorcist or something. You lay there, just something fly by you. Everything on the deck would go flying by. About another second and come flying back. This went up hour after hour. And so when I was on watch, my watch station was a 40 millimeter director. Now I was the guy who operated, who had a 40 millimeter quad down on the deck. And as we were hooked together, and as I turned, and I would turn that thing down below. And when I squeezed the trigger, the captain would have to champ on the thing down below, and that would fire the gun. So that's where my battle station, my watch station was the same. So I was on this station here, and right between us, there was one on each side. I was on the port side, right on the starboard side was the same thing. And there was a little part that went inside here, a little ramp, and it went into the aft control thing. And the control thing was where you could run the ship from the middle of the ship instead of the front, instead of up in the bow of the bridge. And inside there was what they called a clinometer. A clinometer was like half of a protractor, upside down protractor. And there was a needle in it. And as the ship rolled, the protractor moved, but the needle stayed the same. And before I went off watch at 12 o'clock noon, that thing registered 42 degrees in each direction. That's almost halfway over. So that was okay. And, we were just, like I said, we were young teenagers. We were immortal. When you're a teenager, you don't think about this stuff. Nothing bothers you. So, and the other part about it is there were battleships. There were battleships, and you could see them now. Battleship. These things were almost 900 feet long, and it displays about 30,000 tons. And the ocean and the storm did the same thing to them it did to us. I can still see those battleships. I couldn't see too far, maybe one or two, because then there was no more visibility. But these battleships would tear into the wave. The wave would pick them straight up in the air, tip them at the top, and they'd come down, and screws would come out of the water. And the waves, while I was on watch, like I said, I was about 70 feet off the water. And when that thing tipped over, I'm looking straight out at solid water. When it goes the other way, I'm looking straight up at whatever was the sky, but it wasn't the sky anymore. It was just this plain gray mist or whatever. So this went on all that day and all the next day, and I went back on the watch the next day from 12 to 4. And it was still pretty bad, but not as bad as it had been, and things started to calm down. So then on the third day, when I went on watch at the 4 o'clock, it was 4 to 6, 4 to 6, 6 to 8. When I watched at 4 to 6, things were getting calm, and the stars were coming out at night. And you look out over the ocean, and all you can see were lights. Guys in the water. Flashlights. And we were too we were too big to pick them up. It was too far from we had about 25 to 28 foot freeboard, which was from the water to your deck. And so we would call out where the position of these people, and then smaller ships would pick them up. And so I can remember when I came off watch the first time, as solid as I was against the weather, I was soaked to the skin, the water ran out of me, ran out of my boots. It was something to behold. And sitting here, maybe I don't know if I could impart to you what this was like. In hindsight, it was really something. When I was going through it, I didn't think too much of it. I said, look at that ship over there, the way things carrying on. What's going on with them? You know, what's flying around? And things flew around, and the lines all came down, the flags all came down, and it just tore things apart. And the bad part about the whole thing was there were 3 destroyers got broken up. And there were the hull was Benson and Monahan. We lost 800 people. Not a shot fired. Think about it. So we, after that, we went back to in the Carolines, so Ulithi, and they tightened everything up and so forth, and we went back out, and that's when we finally got to Tokyo. We made airstrikes at Tokyo. We went to Iwo Jima, Okinawa. We ended up at Tokyo at the end of the war. So I did say at the end of my talk, I'd give you about the Astoria, the commissioning. You know, that was a big deal when you're put into commission. Had all kind of brass there and all kind of inspection. I didn't have to go through inspection. I'm in the spud locker form around the potatoes and the lettuce and so forth. But they have when you put a ship into commission, there is a commissioning pennant. It's a long, skinny thing. And it goes up, it never comes down. Even when you're reporting, they take the flag down, and that commissioning pennant stays up there. And it stays there until that ship is taken out of commission. And the lines broke when I was on watch, and it came down right beside me. It's the original commissioning pennant, USS Astoria. I go to reunions and people want to buy this. You become a plank owner. Now, this is a legal thing. You actually get a piece of paper that says you are a plank owner and you own a piece of that plank. When that ship is then taken out of commission and scrapped. They scrapped the Astoria in 1971. That was my plank. Upside down. A friend of mine had a trophy shop in Pembroke. He put the plank on. So, I have a book up here. I'm going to just give you one little, it's just like the Navy's like life, and things happen that they stick in your mind. You never realize, how crazy it is, how crazy life can be. We had an engineering officer who was a full 3-striper, the commander, full commander, wonderful guy, and he and the pilot. We had 2 what we call Goonie birds on board. They were OS-2U observation planes, and these guys would fly. We had 2 of them, and we had 4 pilots, and these fellows would fly and rescue sailors, rescue downed airmen, and they won, I think, something like 5 or 6 distinguished flying crosses going out in enemy fire and rescuing these people. But the head pilot and the engineering officer were good friends. And they were always ragging on each other. And so one day the pilot told the engineering officer, he said, I'll take you for a ride. So we were in, I think we were in California, I'm not sure. But anyway, they lowered the plane into water. Usually they shoot them off the catapult. They lowered it into the water, and it's, of course, a two-seater. And this is the truth. I'll have a picture here. I'll show you. Anyone wants to see it. They put it in the water. He revved to start the engine. He revved the engine up. He went about 30 feet, and the engine fell off. That's a true story. There was one bolt holding it on the bottom, and so we have this. This is a book that it's about. If you come up and look at it, you're welcome to do it. It's about 65 years old, and so. All kinds of things. There's a picture here of Mount Suribachi before we knocked the top off. We did. We fired at Iwo Jima. We hit the knocked the top of this Mount Suribachi off before they put the flag up there. So anyway, I don't want to bore you because I could stand here and tell you about little things that happened, what the Marines did in officers' country. So everybody had their own. I will tell you, everybody had their own section that they had to take care of. Now, I was in the deck division, and we scrubbed the deck and scraped this and that and so forth and so on. And the Marines did the same thing in officers' country. So after the war was over, I don't know if we were in Pearl Harbor or not, but the Marines they were getting ready for an inspection. And the Navy had a crazy thing. They would paint all the decks in the showers were metal. They would paint these decks. But of course you turn the water on, nothing flat, no paint. Well, they had everything painted ready for inspection, and one of the shower heads leaked. And he couldn't stop the leak, and he couldn't get anyone there in time to fix the leak. It was just good. What do you think they put over it? A condom. How many guarantee you one thing? Those things will hold over a gallon of water. So these are some of my experiences. And like I said, I was in combat, but I thought what stuck in my mind was this. It was a typhoon. And I saw a thing one time years ago in an almanac, how many thousand people were killed on land. Hurricanes here or there, was typhoon. It was mostly out at sea, but I can remember that so well. And so anyway, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer them. Or try.
Typhoon affect any of the other fleets that was in your area, or only the third fleet?
Only the third fleet. Let me get to something here. I say the third fleet. If you stand at sea, I'm going to give you a little bit of a long answer here. If you stand at sea, you can look any direction 7 miles. So you're going 14 miles. So if you figure out the thing of a circle, you're looking, and we had ships the whole way. Those ships, that was 144 square miles of ships. Now, after a while, before we went to, I think we're coming out of Iwo Jima going to Okinawa, and we became the 5th Fleet, same ships. I knew the Japanese knew that, because they changed commanders. We had a commander named Admiral Spruance, and his underling was a guy by the name of Pete Mitzer. But when Halsey was there as the 3rd Fleet, when Spruance came there, it was the 5th Fleet. But they were the same ship. Every ship in that was affected by this. And the thing about it was without the fuel in these ships, it just bounced them up and down like like a cork, because we got bounced up and down. And it just broke them apart. And there were three ships and actually 3 destroyers. These things are like about 500 feet long.
Jim, that was called Halsey's Typhoon, was it not?
I never heard it called. I just found out not too long ago the original name of it was Typhoon Cobra. I never heard it called it, but there was talk about it because our job was to launch planes, and you couldn't launch planes in this. You couldn't launch anything, and we lost two. We lost one of our planes. We had these observation planes, and we lost one because this bullet right over on the side. Back in they were in an aft, and they were battened down there, and knocked one over and just broke the wings off. So just threw it over the side. They threw a lot of planes over the side. I used to see that. If we were right beside the aircraft carriers, and you'd see them come in. They're coming in, one after another. If one came in there and he didn't do right, they did get the pilot out of there and just throw it over the side. Which reminded me, I was going to tell you this too. I just got sidetracked, choked up a little bit there. Oh, my brother would fly out, wag his wings, come back at night. I knew he was there.
Jim, those were planes, your observation planes, were they the ones called Kingfishers?
They were called Kingfisher, OS2U Kingfisher. They had a single engine that had a double seat and had one long pontoon in the center and then one each out on the tips of the wing.
Now, those catapults, were they compressed there or,
No.
or a charge?
No, we shot them off the 6-inch charge. When we get catapults out, they could take off on the sea if they had to, but most of the time when we sent them out, we shot them off.
Anything else?
Yes, sir.
I remember seeing an Astoria somewhere, and I don't remember where, but wasn't that an anti-aircraft carrier? Didn't that main battery?
Oh my, yes.
Main battery.
Oh yes, we had 12 6-inch guns and 12 5-inch guns, and we could fire those babies out. You could think about the horizon, about 7 miles. Oh yeah, no, we bombarded Iwo Jima. We bombarded. I'd have to look in the book here. I have a list of things here where we bombarded. A lot of places we bombarded. We just never fought with another ship. They never got that close. We had too much air power. Yes, sir.
Do you have reunions of your shipmates?
We have had 4 Astoria reunions, and there was a 5th one. There was another Astoria that had sunk, and we had a reunion with them. Now, the Astoria that I was on was originally, the keel was laid in 1947. Originally, it was supposed to be the USS Wilkes-Barre. As a matter of fact, when we get on this ship, there were plaques on it, Wilkes-Barre. We had to take them off and they renamed it the Astoria because of the one that was sunk. So we had 2 in Boston, 1 in Mankato, Minnesota. There was a man, he was from Mankato who arranged this, and I had another one in Buffalo, New York. And the one with the other Astoria, the one that was sunk, was in Astoria, Oregon, right at the mouth of the Columbia River. Then I also went to 3 reunions for people from Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima reunion every year. As a matter of fact, there's every February, and I get one every year. And they're all from fellows from the South. They're mostly Marines, and let's see, I've been to New Orleans, Mobile, Biloxi, and they're always down south. They've been to somewhere in Texas too. But I was saying to some friend of mine here somewhere, what was amazing about Iwo Jima was, you realize, nobody realized, I see these guys at reunions, you wouldn't think anything of them. And in Iwo Jima, there were 22 medals of honor winners. Think about that. Yes. Cramps Shipyard, Philadelphia. Cramps like you get a cramp in your leg, cramped shipyard. It was up the Delaware River, about 2 miles from the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Yes, sir.
How long did you stay in, and what did you do when you got out?
Okay, it's a good question. I had a most unusual job when I first got out. See, I had worked on the railroad before I went in. And when I got out, I thought, I don't want to go back to the railroad. So I was a clerk typist as well. What kind of clerk typist? I'll tell you what I did do. There was a disciplinary barracks in New Carlin. And I was a clerk typist over there, and I administered dishonorable discharges. Yeah, there were people who had been court-martialed and were dishonorably discharged. And the sad thing about it was, I counted it one time. I was there 14 months. I discharged 256 people. 2 of them were officers. They didn't get dishonorable discharge. They got other than honorable something. They couldn't get any benefits either. Of the 254, 1 graduated from high school. But then after 14 months of that, I quit and I went back to the railroad, and I spent 41 years on the railroad. And I retired. Yes, sir.
Why was there a change of command from Halsey to the other man, Stack's Point?
Well, that was a constant thing. They would take these people back, and I guess they went back to talk to the Nimitz and King and those people, and then they would have to relieve them. And all they did was they would change their shift, like they were on different ships. I forget what they called the ship that was in head of the whatever. But these two, the 5th Fleet and the 3rd Fleet, and Spruance was seen, the way I understand, he was more of he knew a little bit more about warfare than anybody. Halsey was an impulse. He did the things on impulse. He would do this and do that. You can read more about him in the story of Midway, and it was the Coral Sea. But Spruance was by the book. But we were at Spruance at Okinawa, and that's where we saw more action than any place where we really got attacked by a plane. The kamikaze came after us.
Were you ever hit by kamikaze?
We weren't, but we were close to it. We had a bunch of ships were hit. Yes, sir.
When you started talking about Admiral Halsey and Admiral Spruance, just having a flash in my mind the scene from the movie Midway, where it's it was It was Glenn Ford played Halsey, and Robert Mitchell played Spruance. He talks about, do you think I can hell you play as well as you? He says, I'm the scary guy. He says, look, you just don't do it the way I do it, do it the way you do it.
That's right, yeah. What did John Wayne play? he was, I'm just kidding, he was in everything. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. Yes, sir.
He had skin disease. He was in the hospital for the Midway operation.
Paul?
After the typhoon, how much damage did you have on your ship, and were able to continue, or did you have to go into
Oh, no, all they did, we had a lot of, like, things nuisance. We didn't really get down that much. Just some things were wrecked, broken, but it was mostly tighten bolts, rivets, tightening the rivets, that sort of thing. And we came out of it pretty well. And each ship had ballast. The ballast was usually the water, and to hold you down. And they claimed that our ship could go over to 90 degrees and right itself. I didn't want to take that chance. 42 degrees is far enough for me, which is as high as we got. We did. I actually saw that with my own eye, 42 degrees. But, yes, sir. Dale, Dan?
Jim, Was Halsey ever brought up on charges? They said, I read where they were going to charge him, and because of being a war hero, they decided not to bring any charges against him.
No, I did read one time where he left one of the battles, I think it was Coral Sea, he left to go some other place when he shouldn't have, and ships got sunk. I don't know anything about his being was going to charge him. That's what it's about.
But the other question I got, Jim, were you were talking about these destroyers, and the Fletcher class just came out, like down in the Philippines there, and they claimed that they were overloaded with radar and stuff on topside. Did you ever they bring that out at all?
No, I don't know about that. I know that the only thing I know is that I went to see a cruiser, the same kind of a cruiser, same style as mine, a Cleveland class cruiser. The only one I know of is a Little Rock in Buffalo, New York. They changed it to a rocket thing. It's completely different. I couldn't even find my compartment. But yes, sir.
What happened to the can during that typhoon? They were to take on seawater developed because Halsey said he could not take on seawater because he wanted to do
Well,
they knew they were low in fuel. The ones that survived, the captain took on seawater regardless of what happened. The three that were lost didn't break up.
Yes. They roll over, yeah.
Because they were riding so high.
Yeah. Well, the bouncing up and down didn't help. I want to tell you something. That's when we come out of the water at the top of those waves. That whole ship, you couldn't believe how that. You'd think it was an earthquake. But it's like anything. You kind of got used to it. It was nothing. Yes, sir.
What did you say the name of the training camp up in New York State? What was the name of that again?
Samson.
Is it on the St. Lawrence or on the lake? Or?
It's at the tail end of Lake Seneca. It's up in Geneva, New York.
Oh, okay.
They made it when they created the Air Force, they made it an Air Force place, and now it's the Navy has a place there now. A group took it over, and there's a state park there, and the state park allowed the Navy to do. You can go up there; they have all kind of stuff there. They even have a thing for a submarine periscope there.
Young man, it's been very patient.
That's all right. I don't know.
I just want to say thank you for sharing your story. And I was wondering if you could talk at all about your perspective or your shipmate's perspective on the Japanese. Specifically, how did you feel towards the Japanese soldiers or kamikaze or in general?
Well, you have to understand that I'm sure there are people who lived in that time. It was different than it is now. It was, that's the enemy. There was the only real Japanese I saw. We shot one down, and he was still living. He was floating by, and he just like waved. They picked him up. I really, what can you say? You know, you shoot at him. I was pretty upset about the part about they put the ones in the camp that were American citizens. That wasn't, but I wasn't, it's hard to, when you're not in charge, when you're in charge of millions of people, it's hard to make those decisions. You have to think a lot. So I can't, yeah.
How did you feel about the atomic bomb? Or your shipmates? You don't have to speak for yourself. If you want.
Well, we didn't know anything about it. And here's the funny thing. I have another picture in here. Think about this. You don't think I'm old? I have a picture here. How do you think about this? This book. We loaded stores. We turned on the lights. We loaded stores in Tokyo Bay, July 31, 1945. When did they drop the atomic bomb? So you can argue all you want to. It ended the war. There was not one more person in the United States got had anything happen to them through combat. It was there, and of course, one of the things that I think about, we passed any Waytalk on the way out, and we missed the Thanksgiving. The Islanders of Durham, when they blew it up with an H-bomb to test it. Well, we didn't know anything about it. We just heard that there had been a terrible bomb, and then they dropped another one, and the war was over. And we didn't even know the war was over till usually no one came on board our ship, but some guy came on board the ship. Who was this guy? He was a photographer and a reporter. Said, you know the war's over? No, we didn't know that. I said, why are you so glum? All those guys are back there at the States with all those women. Here we are. Look at this. So now you ask me, that was you have to remember we were all teenagers. Yeah, young fellas. Ma'am?
Yeah, you didn't have an opportunity to finish telling us about your brother. Started talking about
My brother? You'll forgive me. My brother was, he was a pilot on the Lexington. He flew F-4F Wildcats. And he came home and he went to Penn State. He graduated, I think in 1951. And he had a degree in mineral industries. He was a metallurgist. And he died at the age of 72. Long kid. Too much smoke. His nephew sitting behind you. That's my son. One of my sons.
Well,
Yes, sir.
was the Quad 40 that you were the?
The Quad 40. It's a 40 millimeter.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was your shooting record for your own mount that you did the direction control for?
We don't know, for the simple reason that when these planes came in, and we all started to shoot. You're shooting 40 millimeters, you're shooting 20 millimeters, you're shooting 5-inch guns. 5-inch were anti-aircraft also. That sky was black. You couldn't tell who hit the planes. We were credited with 13, I believe. You don't know who hit them because you couldn't. It's amazing to see how much there was there. The flak. It was just, and it had. I think we had 3 or 4 different kind of shells that we used. Was it inflammatory or something? And armor piercing, etc., etc. So.
Were you always on automatic fire control, or did you ever switch over to manual?
Oh no, you couldn't do anything manual. It was too. That thing moved when I moved. They moved. It was. I had a rangefinder with me, another sailor, and in the center of this thing there was a double hologram, a red circle with a little circle, a red circle inside of it, and you line that plane up in there or whatever, usually a plane, and you shot that way, and you'd see a tracer going up. You couldn't tell because too many other ones. I'm telling you, the sky was black with stuff there. So.
Did your director have just one mount, or how many mounts did your director control? Just
one. I was the director. I had one, and I had my rangefinder. But we controlled one. We controlled a quad, which is 4, and then we had. I think there were 12 on each side of the ship. 12 on the starboard. I was on the port side, and then 12 on the starboard side. And then had the 20s. They were individual things. The Marines fired those. Yes, sir.
Well, how did you get your targets? Did they give it to you from the tower, or did you pick them out?
No, we could pick them out. We could see the planes coming in.
Do you have a certain zone of fire that you're responsible to cover?
No, they just told us when to fire. No, we'd see that plane coming in, and we'd get into it. And of course, the other ships were shooting at it before it got to us. They started shooting and fire. I'd squeeze the trigger, and he'd see that light down there. He'd trample on the thing, and that's how we fired. We both had to squeeze. Only one person couldn't fire.
My uncle was on Iwo Jima. He was the extreme right flank, the ones that went up to the north
north of the fort, not towards Suribachi. Do you know, did you ever, you know that you supported the 4th Marine Division at all?
No, I could probably, if you go down south right now, if you go down the, I think it's the 19th, they start on the anniversary of the battle. I think it's the 19th. If you go down to, let's see, where are they? This Metairie, Louisiana, you'll see a bunch of them down there. What's left of them? They're, that's where we're all getting old. You know. I'm one of the younger ones. And, yes, sir.
At the Battle of Okinawa, did you sit 7 Mile out and bombard the coastal area?
No. No, when we went in, we protected the planes, and the planes went in and they bombed. We didn't do very much bombarding. We just, I don't know how close we got, but we were there over 2 weeks before the invasion of Okinawa. And we shot our first plane down, I think it was on St. Patrick's Day. The invasion of Okinawa was April 1, 1940. It was a Sunday, Easter Sunday. And that's how, no, we didn't do that. We just shot down.
That battle was over 40 days.
Oh, yeah, it was a long, yeah. But what we did, we just kept roaming around, and a couple times we broke away to escort carriers back that had been hit. And they said, take them back so far we can get back to wherever they're going to get fixed up. So I think we broke away twice, but then we come back. And one of the things of talking about formation, I forgot to mention this. But one of the things that I said here at the beginning, however, I said that the seamanship of those who navigate us. The most amazing thing was, to me, we had this terrible storm. We were talking about 144 square miles of ships, and when we come out of that storm, we were in perfect formation.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
My canned food fund is getting low, so they'll be around